Now this little gremlin is coming out just in time for Halloween. And to me, this is an interesting product because this actually represents the single cheapest tube amplifier that I have ever reviewed. Not only is it the cheapest, but it also happens to be a Class A fully balanced tube amplifier with a pair of matched tubes that come with it, all for only $120. Now on paper, this actually sounds great. The real question is, does it sound any good? We'll definitely get to that, but first some disclosures. Oppo sent this out. They are an affiliate of mine. I do have affiliate links for this if you do choose to buy it. I would appreciate you using those links, but you're not obligated to at all. Now, as far as the build goes, in their own marketing materials on their website, they actually call this thing ugly, which I think is funny. It's not actually that ugly. I think these exposed chassis look pretty cool, but they do make me a little bit nervous. I would just recommend covering them with a piece of cloth when you're not using it. If not for safety of dust, just to kind of keep it from getting dust in places that are very, very difficult to clean. That being said, one of the benefits that you get to take advantage of is because it doesn't have this crazy chassis that they have to pay for and build and manufacture, that brings the cost of units like this down. And 120 bucks for a fully balanced amplifier like this is actually pretty rare. On top of that, you get the tubes and everything. So if this is up your aesthetic alley, this is a really interesting product. The lights on here are completely optional. There's this little tab that you can turn them on and off, but it is only green or off. For your inputs, you have XLR and 4.4 millimeter. Same with the outputs. You have 4-pin XLR for your headphones and 4.4 millimeter for your headphones. And that's it. There's no unbalanced anywhere on this amplifier. For the money, I think the build quality here is perfectly reasonable. I do wish the volume dial was a little bit thicker feeling, a little bit more syrupy, a little bit less thin feeling. So they could make a little bit of an improvement there, but otherwise the build quality is pretty good for this type of design. Now this comes with a pair of what Oppo calls their core tubes. That's the 120 price category. You can get something called the Select tubes, which we'll talk about in a little bit, which bring this up to 270, which is also another patched pair of the 12AU7 tubes that are on here. Lots of people have their own aftermarkets, and you could totally use those in this if you wanted to. This is also fairly interesting because there is actually another kind of pull tab, the same tab you would use to change the color, just on the opposite side. This tab allows you to switch between 12AU7 tubes and 6922 tubes. Now regarding changing the tubes out, these have these little nuts on the top. On the iFixit kit, they have this 5.5 millimeter nut changer, and that actually fits perfectly. If you have that, it comes in like their standard iFixit kit. So that's what I was using to change this out, if you do want to change it out. It didn't mark up or mar the plastic at all. Now for power, this is actually putting out a really respectable 1.25 watts into 32 ohms. And this powers just about every headphone you would want to run with it. HC600s, R70X Refines, HD800Ss, etc. The list goes on. It can run most headphones pretty well. Like most tube amplifiers, I don't know if I would typically use this for IEMs, but you could if you wanted to. Now, regarding sound quality, the most important thing, I'm actually pretty impressed with how this sounds. Now, compared to my reference, which is a Aune S9C solid state DAC, this on the core tubes, I think has a really nice warm tilt to it. I think it's pretty smooth through the mid-range. It reduces a little bit of that top end treble, which for a headphone like HD800 is a really nice, enjoyable feature, honestly. And it kind of quells a little bit of the upper mid-range that will pop through, especially on a headphone like this. Though seemingly on a headphone like HD600, which is a bit more mid-forward, it doesn't seem to squash the top end of voices as much as it does on 800S. I'm not sure if this is an impedance thing or just a certain frequency thing, but yeah, on HD800S, I felt like this is a really good improvement to a lot of vocals compared to a solid state. Now, like most tube amplifiers, I noticed that the performance is best with dynamic driver headphones and not planar magnetic driver headphones. The Gremlin here is no exception. It's playable with a lot of planar magnetics, but I think really good solid state equipment is typically a little bit better unless you get into really, really high-end tubes. For HD800S specifically, which I've been actually testing a number of tube amplifiers and tube-like amplifiers, I found the fullness added to the mid-range here to be really, really enjoyable. It kind of fills out a little bit of the kind of hollow feeling vocals, the thin feeling vocals that the 800S comes with, and provides a bit more body and guts, especially to the lower mid-range, which comes with kind of that kind of tube warmness, that really enjoyable characteristic that we all love. Two things that this doesn't do with the core tubes is better bass and better soundstage. So when you're listening to an HD600, you're not really going to gain a lot of wider soundstage with it like you will with some other amplifiers. Now, you do gain soundstage with the Oppo Select tubes, which brings the price up to about $270, I think. It over doubles the price actually. Those are more articulate, they're more detailed sounding, and I kind of don't know if that's necessarily the point of what I would use this for personally. I think if you wanted detailed and articulate, you'd probably go for a solid state amp. It does add, it continues with that kind of mid-range warmth, so that would be a benefit over like a traditional solid state sound. But on the Oppo Select tubes, one of the benefits of that articulation is a little bit wider sound staging than the Core provides. So if you were looking for that, you could get it. Though again, I think the tonality changes and the reduction of that top end is actually what makes the Gremlin really, really enjoyable, especially for the price tag of 120 bucks. Now, the Oppo Select tubes are better, like in a technical, precise sort of way. They are better in my opinion. They add that warmth that this has, and they kind of bump up, at least compared to the Core, they bump up the articulation, the detail response, especially in the upper mid-range and the treble response. And so it kind of bumps back up from what the Core knocks down. Now on a technical level, I think that this is actually a more impressive tube, and I can see why it costs more. And on the right tube amplifier, I would say 100% I would prefer the Select over the Core. That being said, just in this particular example, I don't really find it to be that necessary or worth it, so to speak. I actually like this with the Core system a little bit more as a tube amplifier. It just sounds a little bit more engaging to me for what I would look to pair it with. Now, the question I wanted to answer was, how do I get a good system out of this that doesn't drastically increase the cost? Because balanced DACs are usually pretty expensive. And the idea that I came up with was under $200 for the DAC and the amplifier here. And that was actually to use a really cheap balanced dongle like this Dawn Pro from Moondrop. This is a USB-C dongle, and it has a 4.4 millimeter output, and you're seeing where this is going. So a laptop or computer or phone plugs into the Dawn Pro. The Dawn Pro sends a signal to the Gremlin, and this gives you a hybrid system. So you can use the balanced output of the Gremlin for the tube output, or you can unplug this and plug your headphones into the Dawn Pro for a solid state sound. Now, this isn't the best solution. Definitely, if you spent a little bit more, you could get a lot better in my opinion. But if you wanted this on a budget with a hybrid system, and you can pair this with the headphones of your choosing, I'm sure that Oppos would love you to stay in their systems. So something like this purple Zeos cable into this R70X Refine, I think would be an awesome system for the money. Now, I think this is a very fun, colorful, really engaging sound quality for this sort of system at this sort of price. So if you did want something like this, I can verify that it's good. I'm gonna talk more about the R70X for like the official review coming up relatively soon. But this pairing is actually pretty excellent. The mid-range warmth, I think, especially handles very well with headphones like the R70X and like the HD800S, especially since the Refine has quite good sound staging, much better sound staging than something like the 600. So you don't really feel as much of a drawback going with the Core tubes on this. You just get a lot of kind of mid-range tonality changes and a little bit softer treble response depending on what you're into. Or, you know, you can run this with the Dawn Pro, like I said. In summary, the world of tube amps is vast and they can be very, very good. I by no means think that this is a world beater or anything like that, but I do think that it is a good value at its price range, especially when you're using kind of the base Core tubes. When you get up into the 270 price tag, that's when stuff becomes a lot more competitive, and I could see a reason for going to other amplifiers, especially with the changes that the Select tubes make. But yeah, with the Core tubes at 120 bucks, I actually think this thing is a bit of a steal. So thanks Oppos for sending this out. Links again down in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.